She was prior to this, she was the head of the MENA and Asia Team of Specialization, the Stabilization Unit, and she has a lot of experience in the area of conflict prevention, peace building, security, and justice over the past more than 15 years across the world. And then we have Malik Carrera-Valesa, who many of you will know because she has also been very active with the DONAP during the development phase and supports that. She's the founder and CEO of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, and she initiated the work in the Philippines on national action planning for UNSCR 2025, and she's providing technical support on national action plans all around the world, including countries such as Burundi, Guatemala, Iraq, Japan, Nepal, Sierra Leone, also South Sudan, and with a particular focus on costing and budgeting workshops for national action plans in countries such as I mentioned Jordan, with Georgia, Lebanon, and Nepal also. So she leads a lot of civil society advocacy on 1325, but also on the use of CEDA as a complementary accountability mechanism to developing cases. And then we have Akram Khalifa, who joins us from ESQA, where he is the regional advisor on gender equality and women's empowerment for a variety of gender-related issues in the Arab region, women's peace and security, violence against women, gender mainstreaming, gender justice. And prior to ESQA, he worked as a gender officer with the OHCHR in Geneva, but also in the field in the region in Lebanon, Tunisia, and also in Africa. And he has quite a bit of experience in advising governments on technical issues related to 1325. So with that opening and I think an understanding of the depth and breadth of experience that we have here on implementing the 1325 National Action Plan, I just want to open it first to give the panel a chance for each of them to reflect when we look at the big picture of what it takes to implement a national action plan, once it's been drafted and endorsed, which is the situation that Jordan is now in. What are the big picture issues that Jordan needs to keep in mind?
Thank you. Salam alaikum and good morning. Thank you to our hosts for welcoming us to this wonderful country and this beautiful place, and especially to all our friends in civil society, government, and the DNI community for supporting us to be here. So as you mentioned, I was with an organization called the Institute for Inclusive Security, and along with my colleague Nikki Ashmich, who's here today, we spent a lot of time thinking about what makes a national action plan high impact. So as you know, national action plans can be controversial in some ways. Some people say, well, they're just a way of hiding inaction in other places. But it is possible for national action plans to achieve very strong impacts. And what we did as an organization was identify what are the 6 elements that make up a potentially high impact national action plan. So I'll describe them to you very briefly here. So the first thing, the first characteristic of a high impact national action plan is political will. And you were just mentioning the design and the structure of this workshop itself is to emphasize the importance of political will. So that means senior leaders in all institutions not only thinking that women are important and have something valuable to contribute, but that those contributions are essential to the rest of their priorities. So not only that this matters, but it matters to the big picture. Second component of a high impact national action plan is design. So it needs to both address the elements of 1325 as well as be aligned with other core national strategies and national policies, because too often we see national impact or national action plans that are isolated from what people really, really care about in institutions or government. So they need to be aligned. And that design process has to be done in an inclusive way. And that's, again, something we heard this morning that Jordan has done exceptionally well. The third element is coordination. So that means the roles and the responsibilities of all the different actors have to be very, very clear. And there has to be a design or an approach and a specific set of responsibilities given to a monitoring and evaluation plan. There also has to be oversight as part of that coordination. So we want to ensure it's not just you're told to do A and B, but that someone from another group is going to come and hold you accountable and decide and evaluate whether or not you've done that. The fourth component of a high-impact national action plan is civil society. And that doesn't mean only coordination with civil society, but real, authentic representation of civil society and engagement of civil society. The fifth is monitoring and evaluation, and again, Jordan has done an exceptional job in many of these areas. So you have to have a plan to collect and monitor and evaluate data. That takes money and time, which is something we often discount. And most importantly, you want a way to not just learn and collect this information, but to analyze it and to change course based on things that are not working. What's the point of monitoring and evaluation if you're just going to learn that something's not working well and keep doing the same thing over and over? And fifth, budgeting and financing. Mavic will talk much more to this, but a core element of high-impact national action plans is that you have to have a budget and financing. And this relates to hard costs, but also accounting for the fact that it takes personnel time, takes resources, it takes energy to implement a national action plan well, and often we discount that. So those are the 6 components, and the question we get most commonly is, which countries have high-impact national action plans? Tell us which country has a high-impact national action plan. Well, the answer is none of them. Not one country in the world yet has a fully high-impact national action plan. There are some places that are further along, as we call it, the pathway, than others. Some people are really exceeding some countries in some ways and some in others. But the answer, the takeaway from that is that every country has both something to learn on national action plans and every country has something to teach on national action plans. And I think that's the spirit in which we're all here together. And the idea is to get to this high impact national action plan, but to keep moving along the journey and remembering that that end state is the purpose. We'll pass it
on. I'm very happy to break the gender balance rules, but also allow me to break the language rule, and I'm going to speak in Arabic. صباح الخير جميعا. أنا سعيد أن نكون في هذا البانل. سوف أتكلم قبل كل شيء. أنا أكرم خليفة، ممثل الأسكوا، وأنا مستشار إقليمي لقضايا المساواة بين الجنسين وتمكين المرأة في المنطقة العربية. الأسكوا تشتغل على العديد من المواضيع المتعلقة بالمرأة، بما في ذلك المرأة والسلام والأمن في 18 دولة عربية. وعبر السنوات الحقيقة تمكنا من توسيع معرفتنا وتجربتنا بالتعاون مع العديد من الدول وتقديم الدعم الفني والتقني للعديد من التجارب في مجال المرأة والسلام والأمن. وحتى لا أقع في التكرار فيما يتعلق بالمداخلات التي ستقوم بها زميلاتي، سوف أركز على موضوع العمل التشاركي وأهمية العمل التشاركي فيما يتعلق بتنفيذ خطة العمل الوطنية للمرأة والسلام والأمن. طبعا المشهد المؤسساتي في المنطقة، في كل دولة وخاصة في المنطقة العربية، هو ثري جدا، وبالتالي هناك العديد من المؤسسات الحكومية والغير حكومية والمستقلة اللي هي معنية بتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن، وقبل التنفيذ هي معنية أصلا بصياغة وبتطوير خطة عمل وطنية لتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن 1325 حول المرأة والسلام والأمن. ومن بين المؤسسات المعنية بهذا الموضوع طبعا المؤسسات الحكومية، الآليات الوطنية للنهوض بأوضاع المرأة، مثلا في السياق الأردني اللجنة الوطنية الأردنية لشؤون المرأة. في بعض الدول هناك وزارات قائمة الذات، مثلا في فلسطين متعلقة بموضوع المرأة. كذلك في بعض الدول الأخرى هناك إدارات عامة داخل وزارات كبرى، مثل وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية أو وزارة في حقيبتها المرأة ومواضيع أخرى. وبالتالي هذه ما يطلق عليها بالآليات الوطنية للنهوض بأوضاع المرأة أو National Women's Machineries. كذلك أريد أن أؤكد على أهمية الشراكة مع البرلمانات، وخاصة اللجان البرلمانية. من بعض الممارسات مثلا الفضلة في العالم في المنطقة العربية هو تكوين لجنة فرعية معنية بتنفيذ الخطة، مثل اللجان الفرعية الأخرى المعنية بتنفيذ خطط أخرى مثلا أو استراتيجيات أخرى، مثلا استراتيجية النهوض بأوضاع المرأة، استراتيجية العنف ضد المرأة مثلا، حسب السياق. كذلك الأحزاب السياسية هم طرف ولهم دور كبير جدا، خاصة تعرفوا لأنه من الأهداف الاستراتيجية في جميع خطط العمل الوطنية هو دعم المساواة، دعم المشاركة والتمثيل السياسي للمرأة وهذا يعني مهم جدا، وبالتالي الأحزاب السياسية. لكن حبيت أترك موضوع المجتمع المدني للآخر، ولأنه سيكون يعني موضوع حتى مداخلتي من بعد، لأؤكد على أهمية الشراكة مع المجتمع المدني. اليوم وصلنا إلى نتيجة أحببنا أم كرهنا. الدولة لوحدها مش ممكن، غير ممكن وغير قادرة على تنفيذ التزاماتها الدولية والوطنية لوحدها. وبالتالي اليوم المجتمع المدني قريب جدا إلى الشعب، في احتكاك يعني مباشر مع المواطنين، وحاضر في الميدان، وبالتالي إضافته مهمة جدا لتنفيذ خطة العمل الوطني. أنهي بنقطة أخيرة، هو يعني التنفيذ الفعال لخطة العمل الوطنية لتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن. يجب أن نأخذ بعين الاعتبار الاستراتيجيات الأخرى اللي موجودة وخطط العمل الأخرى اللي موجودة، واللي هي في تقاطع كبير جدا وبعيد جدا بأبعد الحدود مع أهداف مع أهداف خطط العمل الوطنية المعنية بقرار مجلس الأمن. ومثلا ممكن نعطي بعض الأمثلة. بعض الدول والعديد من الدول لها استراتيجية وطنية معنية بحقوق الإنسان، استراتيجية وطنية لمناهضة العنف ضد المرأة والفتاة، استراتيجية وطنية لتنفيذ أهداف التنمية المستدامة أو لخطة 2030. وبالتالي هناك عديد من التقاطعات. مثلا في السياق الأردني، يعني ما شاء الله الأردن يعني سياق ثري جدا من حيث الآليات الوطنية، وبالتالي وحتى خطة العمل الأردنية أشارت لهذا التقاطع مع مثلا خطة مثلا الاستراتيجية الوطنية للمرأة الأردنية 2013 و2017. مهم جدا هذا التقاطع والسهر على البناء على هذا التقاطع. لا يجب أن يكون في الديباجة كلام، لكن يجب أن نشتغل عليه على أرض الواقع. وكذلك الخطة الوطنية الشاملة لحقوق الإنسان 2016-2025 اللي هي في تقاطع كبير جدا مع خطة العمل الوطنية لتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن 1325. وبالتالي طبعا الإشارات هذه دائما تكون في سياق الخلفية، يعني situational analysis في كل خطة. وبالتالي ممكن للدول، هذا ليس يعني زي ما نقول ليس بقرآن منزل، يجب أن يتم تحيين هذه الخلفية كلما طورت مثلا الدولة خطة جديدة عندها علاقة بقرار مجلس الأمن 1325.
First of all, I would like to thank the government of Jordan, the Jordanian National Commission on Women, for this successful launch of the implementation. And all the supporters, UN Women, Canada, UK, Norway, Finland, Spain, and all other international development partners. And of course, special thanks to all of you for joining us in this very important occasion. And I love the fact that this is focused on national implementation, because from our many years of experience of working on national action plans, there's always a lot of attention, a lot of energies and resources during the development process. When it is adopted, those energy, resources, and interests wane. And because of that, some national action plans, and I am so unhappy to say this, some of them have remained in the shelves of the bureaucracy, gathering dust like any other policy when there's no attention to the implementation. So thank you, Jordan, for leading this kind of approach. In terms of best practices in implementation, I will echo a number of points already raised by my fellow panelists. I would highlight the cross-sectoral partnership and collaboration. I was here along with colleagues from Inclusive Security, Institute of Inclusive Security, during the national action planning processes, and we were our task was to focus on costing and budgeting the NAP. So we were communicating with UN Women and JNCW that for the costing and budgeting, usually it's a smaller group than, the drafting process. And they told us, no, 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 no. All of them want to be involved. All between 35 to 40 civil society organizations and government ministries and agencies. That is a challenge, of course. But in the end, meeting the challenge, ensuring that the process is inclusive and participatory, delivered what we were looking for in terms of the output. So the process is just as important as the output. If the process is inclusive, participatory, collaborative, then there is, that's a formula for a very well-developed national action plan and a promising high-impact NAP. And I also want to emphasize that in the cross-sectoral partnership and collaboration, everyone is on equal footing. The governments are not more important than civil society or other institutions. Everyone has something unique to contribute, has expertise and even resources, technical, financial, and human resources. So that's one of the best practice factor in implementation. The second is whole of government approach, already highlighted by our ambassador from Canada. The responsibility for developing and implementing national action plan does not only rest on JNCW or Ministries of Gender or Ministries of Foreign Affairs. They are the lead coordinator, meaning they bring all of the other government actors in the implementation, in the development and implementation. So it should be very clear, what does the National Action Plan mean to the Ministry of Justice? What does the National Action Plan mean to the Ministry of Defense or to the Finance Department or the Ministry of Housing or Ministry responsible for refugees and IDPs? All of those are part of the implementation, all hands on deck, as we want to say, an expression in English. And whole of government approach also guarantees contributions, financial contribution to implementation. So it's not overburdening ministries of women or the national machineries on women, which are, to begin with, are already very under-resourced, or the gender unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So financing and budgeting, which I will circle back to later, is the responsibility of all of the relevant agencies and ministries in government. Another best practice factor in the implementation is localization. Localization takes Resolution 1325 and the supporting resolution out of New York, where the Security Council is based, and out of the capital, and brings it to communities directly affected by violent conflicts, or communities where refugees and IDPs are found. And localization, at the end of the day, answers our question, what is the relevance of 1325 to a woman farmer in a remote rural community? How can 1325 make a difference in the life of a woman in a fishing village or in IDP camps, in refugee camps? If we cannot answer that question or those questions, we're failing the promise of 1325. And in our localization strategy, which, by the way, is already implemented in 16 countries. In Iraq, we've started the process of discussing a localization strategy alongside the development and drafting of the National Action Plan. It also ensures that local authorities, mayors, governors, local council, indigenous leaders, traditional leaders, are in the know of this important policy, which, to begin with, should be integrated in their work, in managing their community affairs, their social, political, and economic affairs in local communities. And we've also have a commitment from some of these mayors, governors, that they will allocate from their own local budget a certain amount for the implementation of the National Action Plan or Local Action Plan. It's not a lot, but it's a guarantee of commitment and sustainability. It also emphasizes that they have ownership. They own this and they participate in the implementation because it makes a difference in the lives of their constituencies. So these three factors in implementation: cross-sectoral partnership and collaboration, whole of government approach, localization, along with some of the points that Jackie already mentioned in the features of a high-impact NAP, guarantees effective implementation. And without this, I like to say, from napping, which is National Action Planning, they go to sleeping. So that's not what we want to happen with our national action plans. We want them to be vibrant, dynamic, and live documents that respond to the needs of the people who we are committed to serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Salam alaikum. My name is Rosie. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me. Although I work for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for the UK government, I'm lucky enough to have also worked in civil society for a long time and used to lobby my own government on doing more on women, peace and security. So the tables have turned now that I'm responsible for delivering that. So I just wanted to share some of the lessons learned from the UK in the work that we do on women, peace and security. The UK is the pen holder on Security Council Resolution 1325. And we value that and think it's very important and want to demonstrate global leadership on this agenda. But I think, as Jackie said, no one's hit the perfect moment yet on this, so we're still aspiring to that. We were the first permanent member of the Security Council to have a National Action Plan in 2006, and we launched our fourth National Action Plan just over a year ago in January 2018. Our National Action Plan is jointly owned by the Foreign Office, the Department for International Development, and our Ministry of Defence, and we get technical support from our stabilisation unit. Jackie mentioned political will. That is really important in us being able to deliver on this agenda, not just have a nice piece of paper that sits on a shelf. We are lucky to have senior ministerial and senior official support for this agenda. For example, one of the ministers I work closely with, Lord Ahmed, he absolutely champions these issues. Thank you. Is that better? I won't start from the beginning. So I was just talking about political will and the importance of having that ministerial leadership as well as having senior officials champion women, peace and security. I'm very lucky to have a minister in the Foreign Office who absolutely champions this and always wants to know what's the women, peace and security angle to the work that he does. We have the Defence Secretary, who's absolutely committed to progressing this agenda, particularly from an armed forces perspective, which I'll return to. The Foreign Office appointed its first ever special envoy for gender equality in 2017, and Joanna Roper champions this issue in all the work that she does, both domestically and internationally. And again, in the Ministry of Defence, we have a senior gender champion. Our Vice Chief of Defence Staff, General Messenger, leads the work internally. So our National Action Plan very much follows the 4 pillars of 1325, but in our latest National Action Plan, we've translated this into 7 strategic outcomes that make more sense to us in terms of where the UK can add value to this agenda. All 3 departments are responsible for delivering those strategic outcomes, but it is obvious that in some of those strategic outcomes should be led by one department with the others supporting them. We have 9 focus countries in our National Action Plan. They're Afghanistan, Burma, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Iraq, Libya, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Syria. But just because we have 9 countries doesn't mean that women, peace and security and our NAP shouldn't be applied everywhere. It absolutely should. And the UK support for the JONAP here is a great example of how we are supporting this agenda in other countries, even if they're not necessarily a focus country. Our NAP is outward facing and doesn't touch on the domestic part of the women, peace and security agenda. We do make linkages to national domestic sort of legislation, strategies and policies, and we just don't want to replicate what already exists. For example, our Home Office has a national strategy on tackling violence against women and girls. I think in terms of funding, which was a point that a number of people have raised, the UK doesn't ring-fence funding for women, peace and security, but that's because we don't want it to constrain our ability to deliver on this agenda. If we ring-fence money, there's a risk that we won't be able to spend more than that on this, and we want to keep our options open. Civil society is absolutely key in terms of being a critical partner for the UK on this agenda. We work very closely with the Gender Action for Peace and Security network of UK-based NGOs working on this issue. We consult with them regularly, as we do with civil society in our 9 focus countries. In terms of, for one example, in terms of developing the current National Action Plan, we consulted heavily with civil society in the UK and overseas to help us write the National Action Plan. They're also really important in terms of implementing the National Action Plan. We can't do it on our own. We simply don't have enough resources to do it all on our own. But also, they're very much a critical friend. And in terms of monitoring, evaluation and learning, they're there to remind us that we need to be doing more all the time, or help us think about how to do it differently and better, including through producing a shadow report to our Parliament on our progress on implementation every year. Just very briefly, I wanted to flag that one of our 7 strategic outcomes is on national capacity building. The UK knows that there's still much more that we need to learn on this agenda on how to do it better. And so an important part of our NAP is making sure that we are building our own capacity to deliver more on it. So I wanted to just highlight a number of things that the Ministry of Defence has been taking forward over the past year or so. Just 3 weeks ago, the Ministry of Defence launched a new joint services publication, 1325, which is on human security and includes women, peace and security. This is the first time the Ministry of Defence has had a policy that clearly talks about women, peace and security and gives guidance on how to implement it across the 3 armed forces. They also started a military gender and protection advisors course at our Defence Academy last year, and will be running another 2 courses in 2019. Although many of the participants are UK military personnel, it is open to internationals as well. So I think if there's an interest from Jordan and other countries in the region, I would encourage you to contact my colleagues at the Ministry of Defence about those courses. We are also chairing the Women, Peace and Security Chiefs of Defence Network. That's really important from my view in terms of senior military leadership championing this issue and pushing it downwards inside institutions. I think without that it's very difficult to make the change that we actually need to see. And the Ministry of Defence has established a working group with civil society, again underscoring how important that relationship is. But I think going back to kind of where I started, I would say that, we know that there's still much more that the UK needs to do to get better on this agenda. We're always looking at the lessons that we're learning. We want to share those with others, but we also want to hear and learn from others too. We're very conscious that the 20th anniversary of 1325 is in October 2020. We want that to be a real moment, not to keep talking about the issue, but to really have impact on the ground. So we need to be working with all of you and all our international partners to really make a difference on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. So I think that's quite encouraging in terms of the issues that you've all flagged. Jordan seems to be on the right path, definitely. It may not, there may be no national action plan that checks all of the high impact boxes, but certainly Jordan isn't far, and if it continues to stay the course, things look quite positive. I think that the importance of aligning to other national strategies and policies is key. And we heard also this morning that there are a number of very important developments in Jordan on the national planning, the National Women's Strategy, an integrated national plan in the future of Jordan perhaps, and the National Human Rights Strategy and others. And the way that the working groups are designed is very much also to encourage the sharing of experiences and lessons learned from many of the actors in this room that are also engaged in those other plans, to learn from them so that the JONAP implementation is also strengthened. And it's encouraging to think about the localization and participation, because the JONAP was developed under the leadership of JNCW with extensive consultations all across the governorates. So that inclusivity has translated now also into the responsible parties that are listed in the JONAP. And here in the room, we don't only have government and Amman-based civil society, but there are very much women leaders sitting here from all the governorates of Jordan. And also in particular, there's a number of very strong women in the room who've joined us today from Zatari and Azraq refugee camps to bring this very important perspective also to the implementation of the NAP. And in particular, I'd like to recognize them and their experiences and the voices that they will be bringing. Just to go into the second round of questions now, I think to go a little bit into more specifics in some of the issues that we see. So Jackie, we know the first pillar of the JONAP specifically looks at gender-responsive security sector reform. And Jordan is a very significant country for the United Nations in terms of troop and police contributions. So when it comes to the security sector, what is it that your experience from inclusive security, now from the Woodrow Wilson Institute, and about the role and involvement of the security sector in NAP implementation that you'd comment on?
Indeed, the security sector is very close to my heart. I was very lucky yesterday to visit the National Military Women's Training Center, thanks to help from colleagues from Canada, as well as some collaboration with the Gendarmerie, and hear a little bit more about some of the work that's going on here. And I think it's important when we think about the role of the security forces to think about it in the context of a national action plan, but also to realize that integrating women meaningfully in forces and thinking about gender specifically is something that the most sophisticated forces around the world are doing, often in the framework of a national action plan, but primarily because they know they want to do it and they want to do it themselves. And this is something that they're doing to modernize and to professionalize. This is not, I really want to emphasize, as you know better than anyone, a Western concept. This is not something that so-called Western militaries are doing. This is something that militaries who have experiences in conflict around the world are recognizing is really crucial. And so they're dealing with different types and different changing phases of warfare. They're dealing with insurgents, with terrorism, they're dealing with cyber, and they're identifying gender dynamics to every single one of them. So militaries, police forces are adapting, and also institutions, as you were saying, is NATO, the OSCE, the United Nations. They're all developing action plans and strategies and even setting targets related to security forces. So why now? Why are they doing this? I think it's really, again, important to remember this is not because of external funding. This is not because someone told them it's politically correct to do this. They're doing this for real operational reasons. So first, they're recognizing that it is a woman's right to be able to serve in her country via police or military force. That's first and foremost. We must recognize that. Those rights are now often supported by policy frameworks or laws. Especially in all volunteer militaries, people are also just straight up realizing that women can do the job equally well as men. So sometimes we say, well, what added benefit does it have to women? Let's stop and realize women can actually just do the work that is required of them in a military or police force. But then back to this operational element, there's an awareness that women often occupy different roles, they have different perspective, they live in different spaces and communities. and that hearing and incorporating those perspectives is essential to doing the job better. So this is not an issue of saying women are more peaceful and women will bring a softer side to our military or police forces. It's saying if we have women in our military and police, we will have greater situational awareness. We will have a better understanding of threats and of opportunities. We will have better relationships with the communities we serve. If we are in joint missions, we're more likely to have interoperability, so to be able to work better between different countries and national armed forces and police services, because we're used to dealing with diversity and integration. So they're dealing with this for all sorts of very real reasons. And another reason I like to point out is that while we're still thinking about this, we're adapting our institutions very slowly and very thoughtfully, there are others who are exploiting gender dynamics in a very serious and a very important way. Those are our enemies, our adversaries of peace. And again, they don't call it women, peace, and security. They don't have action plans or strategies. But groups like ISIS, they have very specific strategies related to women. We often talk in North America and in Europe about 1 in 5 fighters who travel from Europe to the Middle East to fight for ISIS are women. They're recruited online by other women. They're given messages that are very specifically directed towards women. They're told, come and fight, build the caliphate. You'll be a lioness. Come build this with us. You'll never be respected fully in this Western culture. So very specific and targeted messages towards women. Boko Haram in Africa, 2/3 of the suicide bombers it uses, and it uses hundreds of suicide bombers, 2/3 of them are women. Why? Because they know women tend to attract less attention in markets. They can go in different places that men can't go and be less visible. 2/3 are women, and the majority of those are girls, so child soldiers. In Colombia, 40% of the FARC, the opposition group in Colombia, are women, and they're heavily trained to be spies, to be logisticians, to be medics, etc. So you can't have a peace agreement, or you can't even fight this group militarily without recognizing that women are an essential part of this. Terrorists, violent extremists, and others, they're also exploiting the fact that we have very few women in our security forces. So a lot of what Inclusive Security did, we worked with police officers in Pakistan. And a couple of years ago, I was there doing a workshop with women from civil society, from the police, and from Parliament. We were working together for a week. At the beginning of the week, the son of a member of the Supreme Court was kidnapped. So it was all in the news. Everyone's, trying to find the son who had been kidnapped from the son of the Supreme Court judge. Everyone's worried about it, et cetera, et cetera. 3 or 4 days later, the Army gives a press conference. There's 10 officials from the Army standing in the front line. They're saying, we found this man, this 21-year-old boy or man who'd been kidnapped. Congratulations to us. Well, thank you to the Army. We've done so. What happened, and the reason we knew what happened was because we were with women from the police service. What happened was they tried to drive, the Taliban kidnapped this man. They tried to drive him over the mountains into the border, across the border into Afghanistan. They drugged him, they put him in a burqa, and they went past a checkpoint. So Pakistan has fewer than 1% women in its police force, but there happened to be, that very day, a female police officer at that checkpoint. She noticed something was unusual, she lifted the burqa, and she discovered that it was this man. No one knew because the Army took full credit for having caught him, but it was a woman, a female police officer that had dealt with and had solved this very national crisis. These are the reasons why we need women across security forces. And if I may on that point, we've talked a lot about our human adversaries. Part of what security forces do around the world is they manage humanitarian responses to disasters. And disasters, even though we think about them as natural occurrences, always have a gender dynamic as well. An example I like to give is the tsunami in Sri Lanka. Do you remember the tsunami that happened in Sri Lanka maybe over 10 years ago? Something about 40 to 50,000 people were killed in Sri Lanka. 3/4 of the people who were killed were women. So 75% of people killed were women. Why do you think that is? There's several reasons. They stay in the house. So one of them is that women were most likely to stay in the house with their children and not likely to listen to calls to evacuate because they didn't trust the national authorities. They didn't have a way of getting these messages. So they were able to stay in place with their children And so if you're in a national security force, you want to evacuate people, you have to build the trust and access to women so that they will listen to your instructions. Another reason 75% of the people killed were women. Women are never taught to swim. So of course the answer is not, in a national action plan, you should always teach women to swim. That may not be the answer for Jordan. The answer is that in every situation, in every context, there are dynamics that are unique to that community, and you have to ask men and women, boys and girls, what those are. So if I may just close by saying a few insights of what I hate to say the term lessons learned. I like to say lessons observed, because I don't think we always actually internalize and change the way we behave based on what we observe. But I'll give you five points that we've seen security institutions in particular identify as things to improve upon or things to do well. So the first thing is to think about women and gender, and to make sure we do not confuse the two. They're different things. We often use the word women and gender interchangeably, but they're different, and we need to think about both. So when people say, what is gender, what does it mean really, what does it mean to security? An example that I give sometimes is the concept of bride prices. So we have some friends who are academics, and they've done some research in different parts, especially of sub-Saharan Africa and Northern Africa as well. It costs a certain amount for a man has to pay a certain amount of money in many communities to a woman's family in order to get married, the bride price, right? That price doesn't stay the same all the time. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. But being able to get married is a very, very important ritual for any man. It's an important ritual of passage into manhood. So when it becomes harder and harder, more expensive to get married, young men become more desperate, and they become more desperate to reach this passage into manhood. So groups like Boko Haram, for example, do things like they arrange marriages and have forced marriages so that new recruits can get married and consider themselves husbands. Or they offer funding to do things like become suicide bombers. A dear friend of mine was interviewing a number of failed suicide bombers in Al-Shabaab suicide bombers. And she said, she was a journalist, she asked this man a number of questions. He was in a rehabilitation center, and the very last question she asked him was, what were you gonna use the money for? And he said, well, so my brother could get married. This is a gender dynamic. If men are not able to reach this passage, this right into manhood, they're frustrated, this creates a whole security situation, and that's what we mean by gender. And so what's really important is to not assume that all women understand gender dynamics or that men cannot understand gender dynamics. So we all need training on gender. We also need a strategy related to women. And Canada has a very strong approach on this called Gender-Based Analysis Plus, and I'm sure our colleagues here from Canada would be happy to tell you more about that. So that's first, and I'll go quickly. The second point is to revise doctrine and training. So I think all of us have been in some very boring training sessions on 1325. Raise your hand if you've been in a very boring training session on 1325. Some of you are lying. We've almost all been on very boring training sessions on 1325. What we need to do, especially in military and security forces, is look at not just doing an isolated session for 30 minutes, we check the box and we're done, but reviewing all of our simulations, all of our war games, all of our exercises, all of our case studies. How many women are actors in those? Are there women who are spoilers? Are there women in the community? Are there women in security forces? And what are the gender dimensions? And this, I'll note, is a really great opportunity to collaborate with civil society. And in Canada, what happened, we had a great model of collaboration where a Canadian organization, civil society organization, made a deal with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And they said, we will come in and we will offer suggestions on how to improve your training for police going to peacekeeping missions. But we promise that we will keep it confidential for 6 months. So we will go, we will observe the training, we'll give you our recommendations, and we will say nothing to anyone for 6 months. We will come back in 6 months, do the training again, and give you a chance to improve those. If you still haven't made some improvements, then we are not going to be silent about it, but we are going to have a respectful agreement to give this good counsel. Third thing out of 5, I promise that I'll say, is that a lot of organizations look at written formats, written policies, written products, but they forget implicit discrimination or structural discrimination. So for example, something that we hear often in peacekeeping is that roles are open to women. Women are eligible to serve in all the capacities for which they're deployed, but they serve under a commander who doesn't want to send them to the most dangerous missions. He just doesn't think he should be sending women to the highest risk operations. That's something that a policy won't necessarily change, but it's really going to stand in the way of implementing a national action plan. Another example is women are given time to breastfeed. They say, well, there's a policy, women have a certain amount of time they can breastfeed, but there's no place for them to do so privately. They're not given time, sufficient time to do it, or regular enough time to do it. These are the ways that policies come into action. Indicators, fourth big area of learning, especially in security forces, we do far too much counting, far too many numbers focus, and not enough on qualitative and incremental changes. Because this is so complex, we can't just say add women, add women, add women. We will count them and then we will send them off and we have achieved our national action plan. And I know this is hard because donors, government funders, we all want to see change in a quick way, but we need to get a lot better, and this is what people around the world are saying, we need to get a lot better at finding qualitative indicators, things like changes in attitude of both men and women, performance of men and women. So we're not just counting the number of women in, but are those women actually performing? And the last thing I'd say is that the best national action plans and strategies have been very strategic in thinking about their timing. What do I mean by this? Many national action plans, if you can make them 3, 4, 5 years, what the impact of that is that you outlast an election cycle. And this has been really, really important in many governments to say our plan will be 5 years long. We know we have an election coming in 4. Something that we did living in the United States as civil society, we worked very hard to get the US Congress to create a Women, Peace, and Security Act saying that the government needed to have a national action plan. Because then it did not matter who the president of the United States is, which parties is in power. We now had legislation saying we needed a national action plan on women, peace, and security. So thinking strategically about election cycles is also something that very much is probably not common thinking in security forces or broadly, but it really has proven very strategically useful in a number of contexts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I think ESCWA has done some very interesting research about lessons observed, we can say, from national action plans in the region. It would be interesting to hear how perhaps some of those lessons align to what we just heard from a more global perspective and what's specific in the region.
Listen, as we say in English, we're not reinventing the wheel. So, يعني جميع التجارب في مهما كانت يعني المنظمة اللي تشتغل عليها أو مهما كانت نوعية المنظمة إقليمية دولية تقريبا وصلنا إلى نفس الدروس المستخلصة. كلنا نعرف ما هي العقبات، ما هي النقائص، ما هي خاصة الفرص. وأنا دايما نحب نركز على الفرص لسبب بسيط، وأنه المنطقة العربية يعني تقريبا قبل ما اعتمدت العراق أول خطة عمل ما عندش كثير، يعني 2014 معنا في غضون 4 سنوات كنا زيرو خطة عمل وطنية لتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن. اليوم ما شاء الله عندنا 4 دول وفما 3 دول أخرى يعني في آخر مراحل اعتماد خطة عمل وطنية، منها لبنان إن شاء الله في غضون أيام. هذا أو الأصدقاء اللبنانيين ممكن يأكدوا الكلام هذا، لأنه تكونت الحكومة وإحنا سعداء جدا. بما أنه جاكي كانت تحكي على موضوع إصلاح المنظومة الأمنية، احنا سعداء جدا لأنه لأول مرة في تاريخ المنطقة العربية تترأس وزارة الداخلية امرأة، ونحيي لبنان لهذا الطرح. والعاقبة للدول العربية الأخرى إن شاء الله. وبالتالي يعني احنا قلنا وعي، قلنا لبنان وقلنا كذلك السودان واليمن. وبالتالي يعني الدروس المستخلصة أو كيف نترجموا observed lessons، يعني المستفادة كلنا نعرفوها، لكن أنا حبيت نركز خاصة لموضوع اللي هو دايما يكون خاصة على مستوى تطبيق وتنفيذ خطة العمل، هو موضوع محتشم، هو موضوع الشراكة مع المجتمع المدني للأمانة، ونسمي الأمور بتسمياتها. المجتمع المدني يشارك في عملية الصياغة، في عملية تطوير الخطة، لكن لا يشارك على مستوى التنفيذ. وهذا تقريبا من النقائص اللي ممكن أغلب التجارب، يعني مش لازم، هذا ليس حكر على المنطقة العربية، لكن في أغلب التجارب موضوع يعني منقوص، ومن أهم ويمثل من أهم التحديات التي تعترض عملية تفعيل الخطط الوطنية. وأنا حابب أن نركز على موضوع دور المجتمع المدني والإضافة التي يحملها المجتمع المدني، خاصة فيما يتعلق بعملية الرصد والتقييم. من المهم أن عملية تنفيذ الخطة يتم رصدها وتقييمها من جهة غير حكومية. نعم، وحتى نكون يعني تكون الأمور شفافة، تكون مفيدة للدولة. مش ممكن أن الدولة تقيم حالها، تقيم نفسها، وبالتالي ومن المهم أن الدولة تقيم نفسها، لكن كذلك الجهة الأخرى لها الحق ولها دور ولها إضافة، ويجب أن نستفيد من تجاربها فيما يتعلق بعملية التنفيذ. خليني نبدأ بفكرة أولى متعلقة بليش مش على المجتمع المدني، لكن موضوع الرصد والتقييم. كذلك موضوع الرصد والتقييم موضوع محتشم جدا ومنقوص جدا لأسباب يعني معينة، وهي خاصة الافتقار إلى المهارات الفنية والموارد اللازمة للرصد والتقييم. صحيح الموارد والمعرفة فيما يتعلق بالرصد والتقييم دايما تكون منقوصة، والناس المتخصصة في الموضوع هذا دايما مش متواجدين كثير. كذلك دايما هناك تخوف وخشية من أنه عملية التقييم تكون سلبية، وهو ما يؤثر على وضع الأشخاص المسؤولين عن التنفيذ داخل الدولة. وكذلك هناك اعتبار سائد لأن عملية التقييم والرصد هي مضي على الوقت ومضي على الموارد وغير ضرورية، وهذا خطأ. هيك علاش دايما في تقاعس فيما يتعلق بالرصد والتقييم. من المهم لأنه التجارب القطرية أو الوطنية تستثمر في موضوع الرصد والتقييم وتشريك المجتمع المدني في هذا الموضوع، خاصة وأن المجتمع المدني مثل ما ذكرت في أول مداخلتي هو أقرب إلى الناس، أقرب للمواطنين، أقرب إلى أصحاب المصلحة، لأنه خاصة مجالات تدخل المجتمع المدني ثرية وثرية جدا، ولهم إضافة كبيرة جدا فيما يتعلق بالأولويات الاستراتيجية والأهداف الاستراتيجية لجميع خطط العمل الوطنية لتنفيذ قرار مجلس الأمن. مثلا المجتمع المدني يشتغل على المشاركة السياسية للمرأة، يشتغل كذلك على مثلا توثيق انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان، الاستعمال الخاطئ للسلطة، العنف ضد المرأة، إصلاح المنظومة الأمنية. في كثير مثلا من الدول العربية اليوم المجتمع المدني يقدم تدريب وتكوين للأجهزة الأمنية، وأنا شخصيا واكبت هذا الموضوع في العديد من الدول. كذلك التوعية، وكذلك إجراء البحوث، توثيق التجارب الوطنية اللي هو مهم جدا. كيف يمكن أن نستخلص العبر ونستخلص الدروس من تجارب بعضنا البعض لما نوثق تجاربنا الوطنية. تشغيل الشباب، تمكين المرأة، تطوير المهارات، القروض الصغيرة مثلا. هذا اليوم هذه مجالات يشرف عليها المجتمع المدني، وبالتالي لازم الدولة تكون عندها فكرة التعاون والتشارك، والبناء على هذه التجربة التي يمتلكها المجتمع المدني ويطورها عبر الوقت. موضوع الشراكة مع المجتمع المدني في إطار قرارات مجلس الأمن 1325 والقرارات المكونة له تم الإشارة إليها بطريقة صريحة وواضحة، خاصة في القرار 1889 الذي وهو من بين الثمانية قرارات التي تمثل أجندة المرأة والسلام والأمن، وأكد على أهمية الدور في تعزيز الشفافية والمساءلة للمؤسسات الحكومية الخاص المعنية بتنفيذ القرار، وكذلك الدور الوسيط الذي يلعبه المجتمع المدني بين الحكومة، بين الدولة، وبين يعني الفئات المعنية بخطة العمل الوطنية. كذلك دائما اليوم صارت موضة لأنه دائما نحط كل شيء في إطار أجندة 2030 للتنمية المستدامة. تم تخصيص هدف 17 ليتكلم صراحة على أهمية الشراكات بين المجتمع، بين الحكومة والقطاع الخاص والحكومة والمجتمع المدني. يعني موضوع يعني واضح ولا يمكن لنا أن نتناساه. في الحقيقة ليس هناك نموذج واحد للتعاون بين المؤسسات الحكومية والمؤسسات غير الحكومية. يعني التجارب ثرية ومتنوعة جدا، خاصة في عملية رصد خطة العمل الوطنية، ولكن بما أنه هي جهات غير حكومية هي بالتالي ليست جهات رسمية، وبالتالي دورها ليس رسمي في إطار هذه الخطة، لكن في فقه، في تجارب التي أفادت لأنه المجتمع المدني ممكن أن يلعب دور كبير جدا. تبقى المشاورات هي أكثر نموذج شائعا في التعامل بين الحكومات والمجتمع المدني. المشاورات، الاجتماعات الدورية عن طريق الاجتماعات المنتظمة، كذلك طلب المعلومات. اليوم المجتمع المدني يعتبر مصدر مهم جدا لمعلومات ولبيانات حتى الدولة لا تمتلكها، وبالتالي يجب يعني بهدف تنفيذ فعال وفاعل لخطة العمل الوطنية أن نستعين بهذه البيانات حتى نقيس مدى التقدم المحرز في تنفيذ خطة العمل الوطنية. بعض التجارب الفضلى خاصة يعني حتى من المنطقة ومن خارج المنطقة، لأن المجتمع المدني يشارك في مجموعات العمل التي يعني نضعها لمراقبة أو لرصد خطة العمل الوطنية. يعني فريق عضو في الفريق دائم يشارك في عملية التقييم وفي عملية الرصد. اليوم أنا نحب نحيي دولة العراق لممثلة في بعثة مهمة. تجربة العراق للأمانة أفادتنا الكل، يعني بإضافاتها بنقائصها، لكن أفادتنا بشكل كبير جدا، واستفدنا كثير جدا من تجربتهم، خاصة فيما يتعلق بالشراكات بين المجتمع المدني والحكومة في تطوير أول شيء، ولكن كذلك في عملية المراقبة لتنفيذ خطة العمل الوطنية. فمثلا المجتمع المدني شارك في حملات الدعوة والتوعية من أجل تنفيذ الخطة، شارك كذلك في يعني في تنفيذ بعض المشاريع اللي هي في إطار الخطة، وكذلك في متابعة وتقييم تنفيذ خطة العمل الوطني. كذلك المجتمع المدني قدم العديد من التدريبات والبرامج التكوينية للحكومة في مجال الرصد والتقييم، وبالتالي هذا مهم جدا. تجربة أخرى من تونس مثلا، مش لأني تونسي لكن تجربة أنا شخصيا يعني كأسكو اشتغلنا عليها. دعمنا شراكة بين وزارة المرأة والمجتمع المدني ل localization بالعربي، يعني تنفيذ خطة العمل الوطني. تعرفوا أن تونس مازالت كي اعتمدت الخطة في شهر 7 2018، ومازلنا كي بدينا في موضوع التنفيذ، وبالتالي خلقت الدولة شراكات مع المجتمع المدني خاصة على المستوى المحلي. خاصة لازم ناخذ بعين الاعتبار أنه في قانون جديد تم اعتماده مؤخرا أو مش مؤخرا بعض السنوات، هو موضوع اللامركزية. وبالتالي جميع المجالس المحلية والبلدية لازم يكون فيها المجتمع المدني ممثلا، ولا يمكن على أي مجلس بلدي أن يأخذ تمويل من الدولة بدون أن تكون في شراكة مع المجتمع المدني. وبالتالي اشتغلنا على تدعيم هذه الشراكات على المستوى المحلي، وقامت مجموعات المجتمع المدني بتكوين تحالفات. وهذا الكلمة هذه يعني مهمة جدا، تكوين تحالفات coalitions لتنفيذ الخطة، لمراقبة تنفيذ الخطة، وكذلك يعني لتقييمها. ننهي بتجربة صغيرة أخرى من السودان، يعني شاركت فيها شخصيا كذلك. تعرفوا أن السودان هو أصلا رسميا ما زالت الخطة لم تعتمد، لكن تقريبا الخطة تقريبا كاملة. السودان كونت نفس الشيء زي كذلك كواليشن من المجتمع المدني، خاصة تعرفوا أنه شمال السودان، من السودان فيها موضوع الأمن والسلام، يعني موضوع شائك. كونوا كواليشنز خاصة متكون من الميدياتورز، من الوسطاء والوسيطات من إقليم جنوب قردفان، وكذلك إقليم دارفور خاصة، وعملوا لهم تدريب على الخطة لما يتم اعتمادها من قبل مجلس الوزراء يكونوا حاضرين لعملية تنفيذها على المستوى المحلي في داخل هذه الأقاليم. وشكرا.
Mavik, can you tell us about the interesting experience of the Global Network of Women Peace Builders on the methodology on budgeting that you've developed? Because we know from the very interesting study that UN Women did for the 15-year anniversary on the lessons that financing is the #1 biggest challenge to implementation of national action plans. And the case of Jordan is quite interesting because implementation started with national financing, and there's this very interesting pooled fund modality for financing, but there's still important lessons for national budgeting that can be learned in Jordan.
Absolutely. Before I speak about financing for National Action Plan implementation, I just wanted to pick up on a few points that my fellow panelists have raised. Monitoring and evaluation is critical. On all policies, on all laws. It tells, it serves as a guidepost on where we are at. Are we achieving our objectives, our goals? Are we meeting our expected outcomes and outputs? If not, then we need to do something. In mid-course, we might need to alter our implementation strategy. But I also want to emphasize, and I believe Jackie and Rosie earlier have already spoken about reporting. Where do you take the results of your monitoring and evaluation? And I'm happy to see that increasingly there's been reporting in parliaments. And we do hope that all member states will do this, not just in developed countries or donor countries, but equally important in developing countries. But I also want to emphasize a very good reporting and monitoring and reporting accountability mechanism is CEDAW. After the adoption of General Recommendation 30 on women in conflict prevention, conflict and post-conflict resolutions, all 189 state parties to CEDAW are now compelled to report on their implementation of the Women, Peace and Security resolutions. There's no escaping for them, but because we've monitored, we've been to Geneva and followed the reporting, and the CEDAW experts ask the reporting countries, do you have a national action plan? Did you involve civil society in the development of your national action plan? Does your national action plan have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism? Does your national action plan have a dedicated funding? So I think it's also, I'm also alerting our member states who are represented here that the next time you report to CEDAW, expect these kinds of questions. And Iraq, by the way, is reporting in between October and November session of this year. And the other strength of CEDAW is they put, the experts put the same weight on the government compliance reports and the shadow report from civil society. So it's a very, very important process. And GNWP has been facilitating training on the use of CEDAW for reporting on the Women, Peace, and Security Resolution. So last year, we worked with Palestinian women's organizations as well as state representatives, and also with Nepal, and this year we're working with Ukraine. We were supposed to also facilitate the training for Yemen, but they decided not to report. The other point that I would like to make is, despite all of our achievements, we still need to do a lot of work on messaging. Messaging on National Action Plan implementation, but messaging on the Women, Peace, and Security resolutions in general. And when we talk about participation, it is very important to emphasize participation at all levels, and not only on matters of peace and security, but in all aspects of decision-making and governance. Because women, we know for a fact, are very active at the community level, informal level, but when it becomes official and formal, we disappear. Because we are not seen as experts. Because the framing of peace and security, and especially peace negotiations, is very much attached to who are waging the war, who are holding the guns. It's very much defense and military perspective. That's why it's still literally and figuratively a two-sided table. The warring parties, who are waging the war, not on those who are waging the peace, and mostly those are women. So we're not just trying to put women in negotiating tables, we're also working hard to reshape the table. So it becomes literally and figuratively a round table where all actors, where all parties to conflict and all actors of peace are equal participants. And on the matter of prevention, there's still a tendency to emphasize messaging on prevention of sexual violence, sexual and gender-based violence, but not prevention of war itself or prevention of violent conflicts themselves. For as long as violent conflicts are taking place, for as long as women are not equal participants in decision-making, the cases of conflict-related sexual violence will just continue to increase. So we need to be very, very clear in our messaging. And this brings me to the conflict prevention aspect is very important. This brings me to my next point, sustaining peace. The sustaining peace agenda is probably the most promising, the most inclusive, and the most challenging in terms of mandate fixation and siloing in the UN and in some governments. The sustaining peace agenda brings together the different aspects of work of the United Nations, peace and security, including especially human security, human rights, and development. And it also emphasizes that the starting point when we talk about peace and security is not when there is already a conflict or when there is an imminent conflict. So the question is not just looking at what are the drivers of conflict. We should also be looking at what are the drivers of peace. So it emphasizes the fact that 1325 is not just about conflict-affected countries, even those who are not, who have not experienced conflict since the Second World War. So there's something for everyone to contribute to. Now, the question, the actual question for me, costing and budgeting. There are now 80 or 81 national action plans. Miki, I know you're monitoring this closely. There are, yeah, we have, it's a good development that more countries are developing national action plans. But out of all of those, only 18 have dedicated budget. Only 18 have dedicated budget. And here, we emphasize, or I liken it to knocking on two doors for us who are advocating strongly for financing for the women, peace, and security agenda. We're knocking on two doors. The first group of doors are the donor member states, and they're all here. And I'm happy to note that Norway, Canada, UK, Spain are some of our donors to the Women, Peace, and Humanitarian Fund. This is a fund that was initiated by civil society, the Global Network of Women Peace Builders and Coordinate, and it took off the ground with support from UN Women and donor member states and was officially launched in 2016. And I'm happy to note that out of the five countries that are now receiving funding from the WPHF, two of them are from the region, Jordan and Iraq. What is the WPHF changing in terms of the funding landscape? There are two important things. First, it provides direct access to civil society, especially women's rights organizations and civil society that are working in conflict-affected communities. The second is civil society are not just recipient of the funding. They have a say in decision-making. I'm one of the civil society representatives in the Global Funding Board of the WPHF, which is composed of civil society, donor member states, and UN agencies and entities. And at the country level, this Global Funding Board has a counterpart, the National Steering Committee, which is made up of the same. And I acknowledge our dear friend Susan Aref, who is in the National Steering Committee for the Women, Peace, and Humanitarian Fund for Iraq. So that's the first door, the donor member states. But the second door, which is equally important, are the national governments. Our advocacy to them is you need to include funding for implementation of the NAP in your national budget. Why? It guarantees two things. It guarantees commitment. It's a strong demonstration of commitment because, let's face it, we value what we invest on. We value more what we pay for. So it's very important for national governments to demonstrate that. But the second important point is sustainability. We've come across some governments when we work with them on their first NAP or especially second generation NAP and in implementation, and nothing seems to be happening. And we ask, why has the implementation slowed down or stopped? And they say, oh, there's no more ODA, Official Development Assistance, from this and that country. So no ODA equals no implementation. But when it is in your national budget, it guarantees sustainability because it is there. And I will emphasize this point by quoting the State Secretary of Nepal, who we've worked closely in costing and budgeting their national action plan. He describes it this way: a national action plan without a budget is like a car without fuel. This leads me to my final point, which Akram already referred to. Economic empowerment, which should be part of relief and recovery. Recovery should integrate very, very strongly economic recovery for countries that are affected by conflict. And it is critically important in the peacemaking and peace-building process that economic rights of women are discussed and guaranteed, and especially in constitution drafting, constitution building, and constitution amendment. Economic rights like inheritance rights, right to own property, right to access financial support from banks and other financial institutions. It's mostly women who are at the shorter end of the stick when it comes to economic rights. And peacemaking and peace-building process gives that excellent opportunity to advocate strongly and guarantee women's economic rights and economic empowerment and in relief and recovery. And this is emphasized as one of the very important factors of sustaining peace in the global research that GNWP led. And here I would like to quote some of our civil society partners, local women's organizations in Nigeria. They said, "Hungry stomachs are angry people. And when there's no food on the table, that could easily lead to conflict because people will do anything and everything in order to guarantee food security for their families and communities." Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Marek. We do have 5 partners to the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund here in Jordan working in Mafraq, Irbid, Zarqa, East Amman, and their contribution will also be very important to the context of the JONAP. But it's also very encouraging that Jordan has recently received a second allocation from the fund, and within the next month or two, there will be a new set of call for proposals from the co-chairs, the government and the UN. So that's exciting. So Rosie, to end this part of the panel before we move to questions and discussion from the audience, is there one big lesson or one big experience to share from the UK NAP that you'd like to give more information on?
There's so many lessons, I'm not sure where to start, but I might just pick up on a point that has been identified by fellow panelists around, thanks, around monitoring and evaluation and oversight and accountability. I think just briefly on the sustainability point, our current National Action Plan has actually moved from 3 years to 5 years because we also recognise that actually it's really difficult to have an impact and to measure that impact if you're talking about a much shorter cycle, and also in terms of implementing partners, actually giving them a bit of space to deliver the work on the ground. And I was also thinking about the CEDAW reporting because we've just been through that process and we had a number of questions around our women, peace and security work on that. So in terms of the UK and what we do around monitoring and evaluation, oversight and accountability, there are quite a lot of different mechanisms that we have in place both internally and externally. We have a cross-Whitehall working group. That probably doesn't mean anything. Whitehall is a road. There are a number of different departments that work along it. So it's an opportunity for MOD, Department for International Development, and for the FCO, as well as Stabilisation Unit colleagues, to come together on a monthly basis to assess our progress on the delivery of our National Action Plan and to look at where we need to review and refresh our approach and also changes that we need to be making. We also have a senior steering group which is chaired by our Minister in the Foreign Office, and that meets twice a year. So that means that there is both senior ministerial and senior official engagement on the agenda as well. We have had very lengthy discussions around indicators and an implementation plan for our National Action Plan. For our third National Action Plan, we did have an implementation plan, but we actually found it very difficult and very restrictive, partly because we weren't reviewing and refreshing it. For example, one of our focus countries, Libya, The implementation plan was set up at a point when there was a real opening and an opportunity to make progress on this agenda, and then the context completely changed, and we weren't able to deliver on the indicators that we had set ourselves for that context. So I think also the different departments that deliver our National Action Plan, we have very different degrees of experience in terms of measuring impact. And that's also reflected in how we do our indicators. With our annual report to Parliament in December, we have just issued our indicators for the current National Action Plan. It's still not perfect. There's still more work to be done on it, but I think that's where we very much welcome feedback from others on what works for them. I mentioned before we do provide an annual report to Parliament, and that's really good in terms of scrutiny. There's an all-party parliamentary group on women, peace and security, so parliamentarians who are very committed to this issue, who monitor what we're doing and challenge us on the progress that we're making. They meet regularly, but they also host this sort of meeting of ministers where we share the progress that we're making on our National Action Plan on an annual basis. There is also an all-party parliamentary group on sexual violence in conflict. Also, as I mentioned, civil society, GAPS, they produce an annual shadow report, which is extremely helpful in terms of highlighting where we are doing a good job, which I think is also helpful to know, and where we're not, and where we need to make more progress. We do a lot of internal monitoring and evaluation, and we're just going through the process of commissioning external evaluation of this current 5-year National Action Plan, because that's important. We need to be able to demonstrate that we are open to that external scrutiny of our ability to deliver on this. Just before I stop, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of other points, if that's okay. You talked about conflict-related sexual violence. This is an issue that the UK government is very passionate about. We have the Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict initiative, and we will be hosting an international conference in November this year, 5 years on from the Global Summit to End Sexual Violence and Conflict. I do completely agree with your point, though, that a lot of the focus is on the sexual violence that is being perpetrated in conflict contexts and not so much on tackling the root causes. And I think in the Gender Equality Unit where I sit and work across government, we do have a much broader agenda on trying to promote gender equality and women's empowerment and really look at those root causes and progress them across the spectrum, including on issues like women's economic empowerment. And the Department for International Development have a fantastic strategic vision on gender equality that covers issues like violence against women and girls, also economic empowerment, political participation. And finally, we very much value the importance of women's inclusion in peace processes. I think there's a lot more that all of us need to be doing to make sure that women are at that round table and are heard in an equal way to other people at the table. We have established a network of women mediators across the Commonwealth, which is part of a trend you will no doubt see anyway. There are a number of networks that have emerged over the last few years, but really trying to work together to make sure that women can be part of peace processes, not only as mediators, but in a number of different roles. And also, for us, a real priority is investing in women at the grassroots level in a sustainable way that means that they can really deliver on building peace and security at the local level. Thank you.
So it's been an incredibly rich hour and a half in terms of the depth and the breadth of the lessons and the experiences and the challenges that we've heard about. And we now want to open it up. We have a colleague who has a microphone. Oh, okay. That was very quick. So let's just start, Natalie, from this side and pass the microphone down, and we'll take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, comments, and then turn it back to the panel.
Hello, I'm retired Brigadier General Sana Sarhan. I would like to start by thanking the members of the panel for the very important insights. You provided us with food for thought for the coming this afternoon and tomorrow. I would like also to thank our Jordan National Commission for Women and all the parties involved in advancing and implementing this action plan for their tremendous effort. I'm proud to say that Jordan was a pioneer in allowing women to enroll in its military establishment and has achieved a lot. And being a member of the Directorate of Military Women's Affairs, this directorate played a vital role in advancing the roles of women, in upgrading their skills, opening new roles for them. It played really a very vital role. Unfortunately, in the last years, because our military is going through a restructuring, a whole generation of senior women, service women, were sent back home with all the tremendous experience that they have. So this action and implementing this action means a lot for us to help the service women now in our military to assume leadership and decision-making positions, especially that we have that the resources are allocated and the monitoring and evaluation mechanism are in place. So thank you so much. God bless your effort.
Please introduce yourself when you ask your question or comment.
دكتورة هبة حداديين. أول شيء أنا بثني وبأيد على كلام السيد أكرم خليفة على إدماج الأحزاب السياسية بهذا الائتلاف، وخاصة القيادات النسائية، لأنه إحنا بنعرف إنه إحنا في عنا عزوف وتخوف من الدخول أو الانتساب للأحزاب السياسية. ثاني شيء أنا كنت حابب أحكي على مجلس الظل. مجلس الظل إنه من المجتمع المدني للرصد والمتابعة كتير حلو، لكن أنا بتمنى إنه ما يكون في عندي مؤسسة واحدة للرصد للرصد والمتابعة، بل يكون في عندنا أفراد من المجتمع المدني للرصد والمتابعة. وآخر شيء طبعا أنا بدي أشكر اليو ان وومن واللجنة الوطنية لشؤون المرأة وخاصة الدكتورة سلمى على إتاحة هاي الفرصة. من خلال هاي اللقاءات قدرنا نعمل تحالفات وتشبيك. Thank you.
Can we pass to Dr. Nims for the question next? To just okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الدكتور عزام الشمايلي، وزارة الأوقاف والشؤون والمقدسات الإسلامية، عضو الائتلاف منذ عام 2015. لتعلموا يا سادة، والشكر للجميع، أنه إحنا أيضا في وزارة الأوقاف بلشنا نشتغل مع اللجنة الوطنية، ومشكورة الدكتورة سلمى واللجنة الوطنية على دعوتنا للاشتراك في تفعيل قرار 1325 ومنذ 4 سنوات. يعني هذا النجاح الباهر لمؤسسات المجتمع المدني والوزارات وكافة القطاعات لم يأتي من فراغ، بل جاء من جهود منذ تقريبا 4 سنوات، وصل إلى كافة يعني أنحاء المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية من الجنوب إلى الشمال، وحتى وصل إلى القرى، فما عاد الموضوع يعني بالنجاح. فشكرا للجميع. وأنا حاب أختم فلأغتنم فوز الأردني بخطتهم، وسرى لبنان إلى فجر الكادي، وتجشم اليمن الصمود على الذرى، وتحفز العراق إلى الإسناد، وعجيج تونس. وين تونس؟ موجود تونس؟ يعيشك. وعجيج تونس ورعد مصر ووميض فلسطين إلى فجر الكادي، لأشد ماء قصيدتي وأرى المديح يليق بنا ويبادي خطتنا هذا ليومنا هذا، غدا للفن والتغراد. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا لليو ان ومن. طبعا
كان بقدر أحكي قبلك؟ شكرا. مرحبا. أنا اسمي إسراء من معهد غرب آسيا وشمال أفريقيا، وأنا بشتغل باحثة ومختصة في التدريب والتنمية وشؤون المرأة. حاب أحكي كم من ملاحظة صغيرة تتعلق بمجمل المواضيع اللي أنتم تحدثتوا فيها. بالبداية بشكر اللجنة الوطنية لشؤون المرأة واليو ان وومن ولكل الناس الموجودين، ممثلين المجتمع المدني ونشطاء وناشطين موجودين. بداية من المجتمع المدني وكخبرة صغيرة بالميدان، أغلب القواعد المدنية والقواعد الشعبية بالمجتمعات المحلية تقودها النساء، وبالتالي أنه يكون المجتمع المدني قادر على التغيير والتنمية ويشارك في صنع القرارات
بالبداية من عمل النساء من الجمعيات الصغيرة، وأكيد في ممثلات من جمعيات صغيرة سيدات موجودين هون بيناتنا، هم كانوا قادرين على دعم المجتمعات المحلية اقتصادياً واجتماعياً وسياسياً، وأغلبهم نجحوا لأنهم يطلعوا من القالب الاجتماعي للصالونات السياسية، صاروا أعضاء بمجالس بلدية ومنهم طلعوا للبرلمانات. فكثير مهم أنه يكون للمجتمع المدني انطلاقة كبيرة من القواعد النسوية الشعبية للمجالس التشريعية، ويكون لهم دور كبير على طاولات سن التشريعات وسن القوانين. وزي ما نحن بنشوف دائما أنه دور النساء بالإجمال مغيب على طاولات التشريع أو تمثيلهم قليل. بما يتعلق بالمرأة والمنظومة الأمنية والسلمية، بنشوف تمثيل للنساء كمان قليل بالمجالس الأمنية أو بالمؤسسات الأمنية، فيا ريت يصير تعاون من قبل الحكومات وتفعيل لدخول النساء بشكل أكثر للمؤسسات الأمنية، وبناء قدرات السيدات اللي بيشتغلوا بالمؤسسات العسكرية. بالآخر بدي أحكي عن الأسكوا والأمم المتحدة، وقبل ما أدخل عليها بتمنى من الحكومة إذا كان في ناس ممثلين للحكومة أو مشابكين للحكومة إنهم يتطلعوا على حاجات النوع الاجتماعي الاستراتيجية ذات المدى البعيد، اللي بتطلع على شو هي الخطط المستقبلية الاستراتيجية اللي ممكن تخلينا نحط حاجات النوع الاجتماعي بشكل فعال، مش بس حبر على ورق ولا بس إنه نحن بنحط خطط وقوانين وأنظمة، لا بدنا شيء يكون تمثيل حقيقي ودعم الخطط والموارد، تسهيل الموارد لدخول النساء في مناصب صنع القرار. بالآخر سؤالي للسيد أكرم، وأنا كثير فخورة يعني تونس لها تجربة كثير رائعة بدعم المسيرة النسوية، وتجربة يعني مهم إنه نتعلم منها، والتشريعات طبعاً. بياريت لو تحكي لنا بدقيقة عن الخطط المستقبلية لمنظومة الجندر أو النوع الاجتماعي تحديداً بالعالم العربي. شو رح تعملوا من هون ل10 سنين لتزيدوا فاعلية وحساسية الجندر بالمؤسسات الوطنية والدولية والمحلية؟ وشكراً.
يعطيكم العافية، وإذا سمحتوا لي إخواني من الأردن والدول العربية بدي أحكي بالإنجليزي لأن معظم البانل بيتحدث باللغة الإنجليزية. After the thanks for you coming from all parts of the world to contribute, I think it was a very enriching session. And I also thank you, you know, some of you were active partners and supporters to us in the process. I just want to raise a couple of points. One of the most important points, Mavik, since you are here and you mentioned the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, one of the important lessons also that we went through in Jordan, because I sit on the steering committee for the Jordanian fund, and we think this is important not only for the fund but all aid coming for humanitarian action, is first of all the fact that what is the role that at the beginning, the funding was going for international NGOs to do the funding coming directly, whether in terms of response to refugees or when the fund began. And we focused as a National Steering Committee that for sustainability and for building the capacity of national NGOs, that they should be partners with the INGOs if they are supporters. And that was, in the second round, we have focused on this in the framework. What we want even more as a steering committee is to see the CBOs being partners and to build their capacity in response and to build on their wisdom and understanding of the local context in responding to the humanitarian part. The other point that we were a bit concerned about is that when you look at, for the fund, the pillars are the global reference. But you look at our plan, and our plan has some outcomes that do not seem to be linked directly, because the funds seem to become more on humanitarian rather than a situation like Jordan, where we have a peace also focus on PVE. So how can we make sure that we are responding to this? I think there is a need at the global level to look at the general from the criteria from the global level and see how we can also become more aligned to what national action plans are focusing on. I agree on the issue of political parties. One of the lessons learned that I have as JNCW, as the Secretary General, we worked a lot with the civil society, but we missed the fact that professional associations, labor associations, and the political parties, which have their issues in Jordan, we have to agree, are actually the civil society. In last May and June, those who moved to the streets were the associations. And we need to actually engage them more when it comes to aligning their agendas with the women agenda and to have them participating. So JNCW is now moving forward to more work with them. This is in our plan for 2019. And one thing that might not be sound fitting to this discussion, but actually it's crucial. And it's one of the challenges that I faced as a national commission in an Arab country where we are affected, part and believers and supporters of the Palestinian cause, is that we are working on a women, peace and security agenda, and everybody is questioning, why are we doing this? And why are we responding to a global agenda that is not able to enforce the issue of ending the occupation of the Palestinians? And I still continue to stand by having a national action plan for women, peace and security. I will not stop that because I believe in that. And it's not only, but sadly, the world has forgotten that we need to end occupation. It's not about dealing with the impact of occupation on women. It's different than conflicts in other areas where there are internal conflict. And we need to raise our voices about this. We cannot reach 2020 and we still see occupation happening in Palestine and what's happening to people in Palestine. And to this, I want to raise another point, which is the bullying of the American government to the Palestinian people. If the US is a permanent member of the of the Security Council, they've just stopped all support to Palestine, which is supposed to be giving the Palestinians education, health. They just cut students all over the world from support. We have to raise our voices about this. We cannot accept that bullying. We cannot keep pressuring the Palestinians to just say, now the Palestinians have an action plan for women, peace and security. And you know what? I watched what Israel was saying on the Security Council a few years ago. It's like, they cannot whitewash the occupation by saying that they have gender equality in Israel. I don't care. You know what? Without women, Palestinian people, men, women, children, youth, living without occupation, able to go on to live in dignity in their own country, this is all really not enough. We are committed to security, we are committed to peace, but we need to see an end of occupation and support to that.